Hello everyone. If you enjoy my channel, please support me with one like, one subscribe, and one share.
The serious girl. Have you ever felt like you were born with a permanent frown? Like laughter was a language you never learned to speak? And fun was something that happened to other people? That was me. Before Halloween in America taught me the most unexpected lesson of my life, that being silly isn't a weakness. It's a kind of medicine your soul desperately needs. I have always been a serious person. In my country, we didn't celebrate Halloween. We didn't dress up in costumes, knock on strangers' doors, or ask for candy. We celebrated holidays with reverence, with respect, with tradition. We didn't dress like ghosts or witches or zombies. We didn't laugh at ourselves. We didn't pretend to be someone else, even for one night. And when I moved to America, I carried that seriousness with me like a shield. I thought it made me strong. I thought it made me respectable. I thought it made me an adult. But the truth was, I was just scared. Scared of looking foolish. Scared of being judged. Scared of letting my guard down. So I watched from the sidelines as Halloween approached. October arrived, and with it, a strange transformation swept through my neighborhood. Pumpkins appeared on doorsteps. Spiders made of plastic hung from porches. Skeleton decorations danced in the wind. And my children, my beautiful, innocent children, were absolutely bouncing with excitement. "Mommy, what are we going to be for Halloween?" they asked, their eyes wide with anticipation. I had no idea how to answer them. Because in my mind, Halloween was silly. Pointless. A waste of time. I couldn't see the point of dressing up in ridiculous costumes and pretending to be something you weren't. But my children saw something I couldn't. They saw joy. They saw fun. They saw a chance to let go and just be kids. I spent weeks making excuses. We don't have costumes. We don't know the neighbors. We don't do Halloween. But every excuse sounded hollow, even to me. Because I knew the real reason. I didn't want to be silly. I didn't want to let go of the armor of my seriousness. I didn't want to admit that maybe, just maybe, I had forgotten how to have fun. And then, one afternoon, my neighbor knocked on my door. She was holding a huge bag of Halloween decorations and had a mischievous smile on her face. She said something that made my heart race. Something I couldn't ignore. Something that would change everything. Halloween confusion. Have you ever watched a holiday completely transform your neighborhood and felt like you had landed on a different planet? Where pumpkins sprout on doorsteps overnight, ghosts appear on porches, and grown adults suddenly start wearing capes and fake fangs. That was me, standing in my kitchen, staring out the window at my neighbor's yard, wondering what kind of strange new world I had moved into. I had never seen anything like it. The first time I drove down my street in October, I nearly crashed my car. What was happening? Why were there giant inflatable ghosts bobbing in the breeze? Why was there a skeleton hanging from the tree next door? Why did the house at the end of the street have a fake graveyard on the lawn? In my country, we didn't do this. We didn't celebrate death. We didn't make decorations out of skulls and bones. We didn't dress up as monsters and witches and pretend to be scared. Death was serious. Death was sad. Death was something you mourned, not something you turned into a party. I remember asking my husband, "What is wrong with these people? Why are they celebrating death?" He laughed. Not a cruel laugh. A gentle, patient laugh. "They're not celebrating death," he explained. "They're celebrating the idea that you can face your fears and laugh at them. Halloween is about being silly. It's about pretending to be something you're not, just for one night. It's about letting go of being serious." I didn't understand. I didn't want to understand. I thought it was foolish. I thought it was beneath me. But my children? They were obsessed. They came home from school with stories about costumes and candy and trick-or-treating. They asked me every single day, "Mommy, what are we going to be for Halloween?" And I had no answer. Because in my mind, Halloween was ridiculous. It was pointless. It was everything I had been taught to avoid. But then, I started to notice something. My children weren't the only ones excited. The adults in my neighborhood were buzzing with energy too. They were decorating their houses, planning parties, sewing costumes. They were laughing. They were having fun. And I realized that I was the only one not smiling. I was the only one still holding on to my seriousness like a shield. I was the only one who hadn't learned to let go. And then, one afternoon, my neighbor knocked on my door. She was holding a giant bag of decorations, her face lit up with excitement. She said something that made my heart race. Something that terrified me. Something that would force me to face my biggest fear. She invited me to her Halloween party. And I knew I couldn't say no. Not without admitting why I was really scared. The costume dilemma. Have you ever been faced with a choice that made you feel like a child again, but in the worst possible way? Where you had no idea what to do, and everyone around you seemed to know exactly what they were doing. And you felt like the only person in the world who didn't understand the rules? That was me, standing in front of my neighbor's giant bag of Halloween decorations. Trying to find the courage to accept an invitation that terrified me more than anything else. My neighbor, Sarah, was a whirlwind of energy. She had a huge smile and an even bigger bag of decorations. "You have to come to my Halloween party," she said, practically bouncing on her heels. "It's going to be so much fun. We have games, food, and everyone wears costumes. It's the best night of the year." I opened my mouth to make an excuse. I don't really do Halloween. I don't have a costume. I don't know what to wear. Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "Don't worry about that. I have tons of extra costumes. You can borrow one. Just come. Please?" I looked at her. She was so happy. So excited. So genuinely eager to share this holiday with me. And I realized that I had two choices. I could say no, stay home, and continue pretending that I didn't care. Or I could say yes, face my fear, and discover what this holiday was really about. I took a deep breath and said, "Okay. I'll come." Sarah squealed with delight and hugged me. "Yay! I'll bring you a costume tomorrow. You're going to love it." And then she was gone, leaving me standing in my doorway, wondering what I had just agreed to. The next day, she appeared at my door with a bag full of costumes. "I brought options," she announced. She pulled out the first one. A princess dress. Pink. Puffy. Covered in glitter. I stared at it in horror. "I can't wear that," I said. "I'm a grown woman. I'm a mother. I'm a professional." Sarah laughed. "That's the whole point. You get to be someone else for one night. Just try it on." I shook my head. "No. Absolutely not." She pulled out the second option. A cat costume. Black ears, tail, and whiskers. "How about this? Simple. Easy. Cute." I shook my head again. "I can't. I don't want to look silly." Sarah looked at me with those kind eyes and said something that made me stop. She said, "Why is silly such a bad thing? Have you ever thought that maybe being silly is actually good for you? That maybe it's exactly what you need?" I didn't have an answer. Because I had never thought of it that way. All my life, I had been taught that being silly was a weakness. That you should be serious. That you should be dignified. That you should never let anyone see you being anything less than perfect. But Sarah was offering me something different. She was offering me freedom. The freedom to laugh at myself. The freedom to let go. The freedom to just be. I looked at the costume in her hands. And I made a decision. A decision that would change everything. A reluctant yes. Have you ever done something that made your entire body scream no, while your heart whispered maybe, just maybe? This is exactly what you need? That was me, standing in my bedroom, holding a cat costume that felt more like a symbol of everything I was afraid of than a piece of clothing. And yet, somehow, I found myself agreeing to wear it. I took the costume from Sarah with trembling hands. "Okay," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll wear it." Sarah clapped her hands together, delighted. "Wonderful. This is going to be so much fun. I'll see you at 7. And then she was gone, leaving me alone with the costume. I held it up and stared at it. Black ears. A tail. Whiskers. It was ridiculous. It was embarrassing. It was everything I had spent my entire life avoiding. And yet, something inside me felt different. I slipped the costume on and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me didn't look like the serious, controlled, perfect person I had tried so hard to be. She looked silly. But also, kind of free. I felt a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. I quickly wiped it away. No. This was a mistake. I couldn't do this. I couldn't be silly. I couldn't let my guard down. What if someone saw me? What if someone laughed at me? What if my children saw me and thought I was ridiculous? I started to take the costume off. But then I heard my children's voices from the other room, excitedly talking about Halloween. Mommy is going to wear a costume, my daughter said. I can't wait to see her. She's going to look so funny, my son added, giggling. They were so happy. So innocent. So full of joy. And I realized that they didn't care if I looked perfect. They just wanted to see me having fun. They just wanted to see me laugh. They just wanted to see me be silly. I took a deep breath, and I made a decision. I would wear the costume. I would go to the party. And I would try, as hard as it would be, to let myself be silly. Just for one night. Just to see what it felt like. When I walked into Sarah's house that evening, my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I was dressed as a cat, complete with whiskers painted on my face. I felt ridiculous. I felt exposed. I felt like everyone was staring at me. But then, I looked around. Sarah was dressed as a witch, cackling and waving her broomstick. Her husband was a zombie, stumbling around and groaning. Her kids were superheroes, flying around the living room. Everyone was silly. Everyone was laughing. Everyone was having the time of their lives. And no one was judging. Because that was the whole point. Halloween wasn't about being perfect. It was about being free. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was starting to understand what that meant. The night of laughter. Have you ever experienced a moment so pure, so joyful, that you completely forgot who you were supposed to be? Where the walls you had built around yourself crumbled without you even noticing, and suddenly you were just present? That was me, standing in Sarah's living room, surrounded by costumes and laughter. Feeling the weight of years of seriousness slowly lifting off my shoulders. The party was in full swing. Sarah had transformed her living room into a Halloween wonderland. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Jack-o'-lanterns flickered on every surface. Spooky music played softly in the background. And people were everywhere. Adults in costumes, laughing and talking. Children running around, their faces painted with excitement. Everyone was having the time of their lives. And I was standing in the corner, still feeling awkward, still feeling out of place. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to be silly. I didn't know how to join in. But then, my children found me. Mommy. Come play with us, my daughter said, grabbing my hand. She pulled me into the middle of the room, where a game was starting. Musical chairs. I hadn't played musical chairs since I was a child. I didn't want to play now. But my daughter was so excited, so hopeful, so desperate for me to join. So I did. The music started. We walked around the chairs. The music stopped. I scrambled for a seat, nearly falling over in my cat costume. My children burst out laughing. And I started laughing too. A real laugh. A belly laugh. The kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep inside you. I couldn't believe it. I was laughing. I was being silly. I was having fun. And it felt incredible. The night went on. We played games, ate candy, told spooky stories. I danced like no one was watching, because no one was. Everyone was too busy having fun to judge. And slowly, so slowly, I started to forget about my fear. I started to forget about my seriousness. I started to just be. At one point, Sarah came over and put her arm around me. "Look at you," she said, smiling. "You're having fun." I nodded, tears forming in my eyes. "I am," I said. "I really am." And then she said something I will never forget. She said, "Fun is medicine. You just forgot that you were allowed to take it." In that moment, I realized that I had been so busy protecting myself from embarrassment that I had denied myself the most basic human need. The need to laugh. The need to play. The need to be silly. Halloween had given me permission to be something I had never allowed myself to be. And it was the most healing experience of my life. Letting go of control. Have you ever held onto something so tightly that your hands started to ache? And you didn't even realize you were holding on until someone gently pried your fingers open and showed you that you were clutching nothing but air? That was me, standing in Sarah's living room, surrounded by laughter and joy. Slowly realizing that I had been holding on to a version of myself that was never really me at all. The night was magical. After the musical chairs, something inside me had shifted. The laughter had broken through a wall I didn't even know I had built. I found myself joining in the games, dancing to the spooky music, even telling a silly joke that made everyone laugh. And with every laugh, I felt a little lighter. I felt a little freer. I felt a little more like myself. Sarah's husband, Mark, came over with a tray of Halloween cookies shaped like ghosts and pumpkins. "You're really getting into the spirit," he said, grinning. "I wasn't sure you would." I smiled, genuinely smiled, and said, "I wasn't sure either. But this is really fun." He nodded. "That's the point. Halloween is the one night of the year when adults get to be kids again. No judgment. No expectations. Just fun." I thought about his words. No judgment. No expectations. Just fun. Was that even possible? Could I really just be silly? Without worrying about what people thought? Without worrying about looking foolish? Without worrying about my accent, my mistakes, my foreignness? I looked around the room. Sarah was cackling like a witch, her broomstick in hand. Mark was doing a ridiculous zombie walk, groaning and stumbling. My children were running around with their friends, their faces painted like little monsters. Everyone was being silly. Everyone was being free. And no one cared. Because that was the beauty of Halloween. It was a permission slip to let go. To stop taking yourself so seriously. To embrace the absurdity of being human. I realized that I had been holding on to control so tightly that I had forgotten how to let go. I had been so afraid of making a mistake, of looking foolish, of being judged, that I had denied myself the simple joy of being silly. But tonight, in this room full of costumes and laughter, I was learning that control was overrated. That perfection was a prison. That being silly wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. It was the courage to be vulnerable. It was the freedom to be yourself. And right there, in the middle of Sarah's Halloween party, I let go. I danced like no one was watching. I laughed like no one was judging. I was silly, ridiculous, and absolutely free. And it was the most healing thing I had ever done. The night ended too soon. As I gathered my children and walked home, the crisp October air filling my lungs, I felt different. Lighter. Happier. More alive. And I knew that Halloween had taught me something I would carry with me forever. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. And it involved my children, a question, and a realization that would change the way I saw everything. Silliness as medicine. Have you ever woken up the morning after a night of pure joy and wondered if it was all a dream? If the person who laughed so freely, who danced without a care, who let go of all control, was really you. That was me, the morning after my first Halloween in America, lying in bed, replaying every moment. And feeling like I had just discovered a secret that had been hiding in plain sight my entire life. I woke up the next morning with a smile on my face. A genuine, unforced smile that felt strange and wonderful at the same time. My body was tired. We had stayed up late, danced too much, eaten too much candy, but my soul was rested. I lay in bed, looking up at the ceiling, and I thought about everything that had happened. The costumes. The laughter. The games. The joy. I thought about how I had been so afraid of looking silly, only to discover that being silly was the most liberating feeling in the world. I thought about how I had spent my whole life trying to be serious, thinking it made me strong, only to realize that it had made me heavy. And I thought about Sarah, the woman who had knocked on my door with a bag of decorations and an invitation that had changed my life. She had given me something more valuable than a costume or a party. She had given me permission to be myself. My children came running into my room, their faces still painted with remnants of their Halloween makeup. "Mommy, that was the best night ever," my daughter exclaimed. "Can we do it again tonight?" I laughed. "We have to wait until next year," I said. But inside, I was already planning. Already thinking about the costumes we would wear, the decorations we would make, the traditions we would start. Because Halloween wasn't just a silly holiday anymore. It was medicine. It was healing. It was a reminder that life didn't have to be so serious all the time. I started to think about the science of silliness. Studies have shown that laughter reduces stress hormones, boosts the immune system, and releases endorphins, the body's natural feel-good chemicals. It improves mood, strengthens relationships, and even relieves physical pain. In other words, being silly wasn't just fun. It was actually good for you. It was like a vitamin for your soul. And I had been depriving myself of that vitamin for my entire life. I got out of bed and went to the kitchen. My husband was already there, making coffee, looking at me with a curious smile. "You seem different," he said. "You seem lighter." I nodded. I feel different, I said. I think I've been taking myself too seriously. And I think it's time to stop. Fun heals. Have you ever felt a weight lift off your shoulders so suddenly that you almost didn't recognize yourself? Like you had been carrying a heavy backpack for years, and someone finally helped you take it off, and you realized you could stand up straight. Breathe deeply, and walk freely for the first time? That was the gift Halloween gave me, not just a night of fun, but a permanent shift in how I saw myself and the world. I started to change. Not overnight, but slowly, like a flower opening to the sun. I started laughing more. At small things. At silly things. At myself. I stopped taking everything so seriously. I stopped worrying so much about what people thought. I started saying yes to things that scared me. My husband noticed first. "You're different," he said one evening, watching me dance in the kitchen with our children. "You're lighter. Happier." I smiled, feeling the truth of his words. "I am," I said. "I think I finally learned how to have fun." My children noticed too. They started wanting to spend more time with me. Not because I was more fun, but because I was more present. I was no longer distracted by worry, no longer consumed by stress, no longer hiding behind my seriousness. I was just there. And being there was enough. I started to see the world differently. The colors seemed brighter. The air seemed fresher. The people around me seemed kinder. And I realized that nothing had changed except me. I had finally stopped fighting the world and started embracing it. I started to understand what Sarah had meant when she said, "Fun is medicine." Because it was. Laughter had healed something in me that I didn't even know was broken. It had smoothed out the rough edges of my anxiety. It had softened the walls of my loneliness. It had reminded me that I was human, and that being human meant making mistakes, looking foolish, and laughing about it anyway. I started researching the science of laughter. I learned that laughing releases endorphins, the body's natural painkillers. It reduces cortisol, the stress hormone. It improves immune function, lowers blood pressure, and even increases pain tolerance. In other words, laughter wasn't just fun, it was literally healing. And I had been denying myself that healing for my entire life. I started incorporating silliness into my daily routine. I danced in the kitchen with my children. I told terrible jokes at dinner. I made funny faces in the mirror. I stopped caring about looking perfect. I started caring about feeling good. And the more I let myself be silly, the better I felt. My English improved too. Because when I stopped worrying about making mistakes, I started speaking more freely. The words came more easily. The confidence grew. I realized that my fear of sounding foolish had been holding me back from learning. But once I let go of that fear, I started to soar. Halloween had given me a gift I never expected. It had given me permission to be myself. And that was the most healing thing of all. A new tradition. Have you ever created a tradition so powerful that it became the highlight of your entire year? A ritual that brought your family together, made you laugh until your stomach hurt, and reminded you that life was meant to be enjoyed, not just endured? That was Halloween for us, after that first unforgettable night. And it all started with a question from my daughter that changed everything. It was a few weeks after Halloween. The decorations had been put away, the candy had been eaten, and the neighborhood had returned to its normal, non-spooky state. But something had changed inside me. I was different. I was lighter. I was happier. And my family had noticed. One evening, as we were eating dinner, my daughter looked up from her plate and asked, "Mommy, can we do Halloween again next year?" I smiled, a warm feeling spreading through my chest. "Yes, sweetheart. We can do Halloween every year from now on." Her face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Really?" she asked, her voice full of hope. "Really," I said. "And we're going to do it bigger and better every single time." And we did. The next year, I started planning months in advance. I bought costumes for the whole family. I decorated the house with pumpkins, cobwebs, and glowing jack-o'-lanterns. I baked Halloween cookies shaped like ghosts and bats. I even made my own costume, a beautiful butterfly with sparkly wings that made my children gasp with delight. On Halloween night, we trick-or-treated through the neighborhood. My children ran from house to house, their laughter echoing through the streets. My husband and I walked behind them, holding hands, smiling at each other. And I felt a sense of joy and belonging that I had never felt before. But the best part came at the end of the night. We returned home, dumped our candy on the living room floor, and sorted through it together. My children were bouncing with excitement, comparing their hauls, trading their favorites. And I sat there, watching them, feeling my heart swell with love. Halloween had become more than just a holiday. It had become a tradition. A ritual that brought us together. A reminder that life was meant to be enjoyed. I started inviting our neighbors over for a pre-trick-or-treating party. I made spooky snacks, played Halloween music, and decorated the house until it looked like a haunted mansion. And every year, more and more people came. The party grew. The laughter grew. The joy grew. And I realized that I had created something beautiful. Not just a holiday celebration, but a community tradition. A tradition that brought people together, that made them laugh, that reminded them that life didn't have to be so serious all the time. My children grew up with this tradition. They learned that it was okay to be silly. That it was okay to let go. That it was okay to just have fun. And they carried that lesson with them into their own lives. Halloween had healed me. And it had given me a gift I would never forget, the gift of joy. Fun heals. Have you ever looked back at a moment in your life and realized that the smallest, silliest, most unexpected thing changed everything? That a holiday you once dismissed as ridiculous became the key to unlocking a version of yourself you never knew existed? That was Halloween for me. And it taught me that fun isn't just fun, it's healing. It's freedom. It's the medicine your soul has been crying out for. It's been years since that first Halloween. Years of laughter, years of costumes, years of letting go. My children are older now. They don't need me to hold their hands while trick-or-treating anymore. They walk ahead with their friends, their laughter echoing through the streets, their faces painted and joyful. And I walk behind them, my husband by my side, watching them grow, watching them learn, watching them embrace the joy that I once denied myself. Halloween is our family's favorite holiday. We start planning months in advance. We brainstorm costume ideas. We decorate the house until it looks like a haunted mansion. We bake cookies and carve pumpkins and play spooky music. And on the night itself, we open our doors to the neighborhood, sharing candy and laughter and joy with everyone who comes. Our house has become the gathering spot. Neighbors stop by before trick-or-treating for a warm drink and a silly photo. Parents relax on our porch while their children run through the yard. The laughter is loud, the costumes are ridiculous, and the joy is contagious. And I stand in the middle of it all, my heart full, my soul light, feeling like I have finally found myself. I think about the girl I used to be. The serious girl. The girl who thought that being silly was beneath her. The girl who held on to control so tightly that she forgot how to let go. I think about how scared I was, how lonely I was, how heavy I was. And I think about the night that changed everything. The night I put on a cat costume and learned to laugh at myself. The night I stopped being a spectator in my own life and started being a participant. The night I discovered that fun heals. Halloween taught me something profound. It taught me that life doesn't have to be serious all the time. That you can face your fears and laugh at them. That you can be silly and free and joyful, and that's not a weakness, it's a strength. It's the courage to be vulnerable. It's the freedom to be yourself. It's the medicine that heals what seriousness cannot touch. So now, I live differently. I laugh more. I play more. I worry less. I say yes to things that scare me. I let myself be silly, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because I know that on the other side of that silliness is something beautiful. Something healing. Something that makes life worth living. And that's the lesson I want to leave with you today. If you've been holding on to seriousness like a shield, if you've been afraid to let go, if you've been denying yourself the simple joy of being silly, let this be your permission slip. Let yourself laugh. Let yourself play. Let yourself be ridiculous. Because fun heals. It always has. It always will.